Hello everyone, I am Dr. AKASH GAUTAM from the University of Hyderabad. I am assistant professor here at the Center for Neural and Cognitive Sciences, and today I will cover this topic, the nervous system. As I can see in the syllabus of CSIR-UGC-NET syllabus for life science, there is one topic under system physiology animal, that is the nervous system, which has following topics like neurons, action potential, gross neuroanatomy of the brain and spinal cord, then central and peripheral nervous system, and finally neural control of muscle tone and posture. But for today's lecture, I will try to explain the gross neuroanatomy of the brain and spinal cord, and then I will tell something about central and peripheral nervous system. So let us start with the definition of nervous system. Like all other animal systems, nervous system is also a well-connected network of cells, tissues, and different organs. But difference lies in its function, because nervous system helps us to communicate and interact with the environment, and therefore it is essential for different life activities. For example, you see any dangerous animal in front of you, and this information is perceived by your nervous system to help you to fight or run away during that odd situation. So, just by this simple example, you might have got an idea about the primary functions of our nervous system. The major function is sensing the world, outside world. This is accomplished by various sense organs like our ear, eyes, skin, etc. After getting this information from the outside world, it is transmitted or communicated further up in the nervous system. Once this information is received at the major organs of our nervous system, it is processed, or you can say it is analyzed by different organs of the nervous system. And after processing and refining of that information, it finally leads to the action or reaction production in response to that information. So these are the four primary functions of our nervous system. If primary functions are clear to you, we will move towards the structural components of nervous system. Nervous system is comprised of two types of cells, non-neuronal and neuronal. Non-neuronal is also known as glia cells, and neuronal. Neurons, which sometimes are called as nerve cells, are the major components which helps in the transmitting of signal or impulses in the nervous system. Whereas these neuroglia or non-neuronal cells act as the supporting cells of nervous system, because they provide insulation, adhesion, protection, and nourishment to the other cells of nervous system. So here the first pic is of a neuron, whereas second pic is showing one of the glial cell. Let us see some more details of nerve cells. As I told you that these cells are specialized to transmit messages across the nervous system. Some of the nerve cells are the longest cells in our body to transmit the information from one part of the body to the end part or the last part. The two major regions of a neuron are cell body, which is also known as soma, and the processes or extensions which arise from the cell body. Cell body is almost similar to the other animal cell types, with a nucleus and other organelles like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. Processes, on the other hand, are the fibers that extend from the cell body in the form of either dendrites or axons. So this is the typical diagram of a nerve cell, with cell body, many dendrites attached to the cell body, and single axon. Axon can be covered with a myelin sheath, which is produced by the Schwann cells at regular intervals. The uncovered part, like this, which are not covered by the myelin sheath, are known as the node of Ranvier. These nodes are important for the transmission of signals, which we will study later during action potential topic. Axons ends are generally branched. So you can see here it's branched and ends into the knob-like structures known as axon terminals or synaptic knobs. Dendrites basically are the fibers which receive signal from the neighboring cells to transmit it further down towards the axon. Soma or cell body contains all the genetic and metabolic machinery of the cell. Axon is a long process or extension to carry out the signal from the soma to the axon terminals. These axon terminals finally passes the signal to the next nerve cell, mostly through a synapse. Myelin sheath provide an insulation to the signal conducting axon. We will study the different type of neurons and their molecular structure in detail during the other lecture. Let us move to the non-neuronal cells of the nervous system. First one and major one is astrocyte. As you can see in picture, it is a star-shaped cell whose processes, or you can say extensions, envelopes the neurons. These are the important cells as these form the blood-brain barrier, or in short we call them as BBB, triple B, to protect our brain from the toxic and harmful components which might be present in the blood. Astrocytes also regulates the microenvironment around the neurons by active uptake of the ions, means they can actively uptake the ions which are released in the surrounding environment and thus protects these neurons from the harmful chemical environment. Other cell is microglia. These are very small spider-like phagocytes which helps in clearing the dead cells and thus act as the immune cells of the brain. Other cells are ependymal cells. Ependymal cells are present at the cavities of the brain and the spinal cord with hair-like processes at the top. These hair-like processes helps in the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid, or in short CSF, which is present inside the brain and spinal cord. CSF actually is like the circulatory system of brain and contains blood components without RBCs. Then we have oligodendrocytes, which provides myelin sheath in the central nervous system. So in this picture, you can see that a single oligodendrocyte is providing the sheath to many nerve fibers. The same sheath is provided by Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system. So I'm going to explain the difference between central nervous system and peripheral nervous system after a few minutes. And finally, we have satellite cells. Here, this is satellite cells, which protects the cell body because they just are located like around the whole cell body from outside. So all these neurons possess the fundamental properties, three fundamental properties. What are these? First one is they can be triggered, set off or activated by chemical or electrical stimulus. Stimulus is basically any change in the body and external environment. So they can respond to those stimuli, means they are excitable. Second is they can conduct or transmit these stimulus in the form of electrical signals. The third one, finally, that they can secrete a chemical neurotransmitter when the signal reaches at the axon terminals, means they are secretory in nature. So here is the question for you. Can you name any other system which has excitability and secretory properties in the human? Okay, let us come to the division of nervous system. Nervous system has been divided into two major parts. As I told you earlier, CNS and PNS, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. The CNS includes brain and spinal cord. So in blue, you can see here this brain and spinal cord is a part of central nervous system. Whereas PNS includes all other nerves which arise from the brain or spinal cord to receive the information and to transmit the response. So we can see the major organ brains and spinal cord, which are part of the CNS in this picture. CNS basically receives, analyze and send signals to other divisions of nervous system, that is peripheral nervous system. Brain in this division is the main control center where most of the complex and higher order level functions like reasoning, language, vision, etc. are processed. Spinal cord, on the other hand, connects and relays signals from different nerves, or you can say from different PNS areas, to the brain. Some of the quick actions, generally we call them as reflexes, can be processed through spinal cord without sending the signal to the brain. Okay, I will first discuss about the brain and then I will go to the spinal cord. The brain is divided into four major lobes, or you can say in four areas based on their functions. So here it is represented by different colors. In this figure, you can see the frontal lobe towards the forehead, and then we have parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and then temporal lobe. Occipital lobe is at the back of our head. One can also locate the cerebellum at the back, which is attached to the pons. Pons is continuous with brainstem and which elongates finally to give rise to spinal cord. So these are the functions of different lobes. Like frontal lobe is involved in higher executive functions like thinking, reasoning, etc. Parietal lobe integrates sensory information from the skin like touch, pressure and pain. Temporal lobe helps in the processing of auditory information and also associated memories too, because it contains hippocampus deep down inside this lobe. Occipital lobe has different visual processing areas like V1, V2 and so on. Before we go further down inside the anatomy of brain, it is essential to understand the planes of brain, because the 3D symmetrical structure of brain has different view from different planes. Therefore, it is required to know that at which plane of brain we are looking for. So here you can imagine that it is the brain of a human who is looking at the anterior side and his left ear is towards you. So here is the left ear and this is like eyes and this is back head. Now the brain has four sides: anterior, posterior and dorsal or superior and inferior or ventral. The brain can be sectioned and studied in three different planes. First plane can be parallel to earth, this one. That is horizontal section. Horizontal section are useful for studying. So this is horizontal sections when cut in this plane. So horizontal section are useful for studying the both sides of the brain simultaneously. Exactly at the right angle of horizontal plane, we have two ways to cut the brain. So this is one and this is one. First way is to cut from forehead to the back. And the second way is to cut from right ear to left ear or left ear to right ear. Remember, both are vertical planes. First way means that is from forehead to the back or back to forehead will give you coronal sections or also known as frontal sections. The second way, like cutting like this in this plane, will give you sagittal sections. In most of the textbook, authors publish the brain diagram of mid-sagittal section, which means brain has been cut exactly from the mid part into two equal halves. Medial section gives us the maximum information about different brain regions from a single brain hemisphere. If we come downwards towards the spinal cord, then the position of dorsal and ventral changes here. The front part becomes ventral and the back part becomes the dorsal part for spinal cord. The cross-sectional view of a spinal cord shows that it consists of a butterfly-like gray matter because it is made up of cell body or soma, which is surrounded by white matter. This white matter is due to the presence of myelin-covered axons. Actually, the division of brain areas into different functional zones like this is assisted by prominent ridges or folds on the brain surface. These folds actually helps in providing a more surface area to have more number of neurons in the brain. The up region in these folds are known as gyrus and down regions are known as sulcus. Some of the prominent gyrus and sulcus in the brain creates distinct boundaries, and these are like central sulcus, this one, due to which there is clear division of frontal lobe and parietal lobe. Then we have another prominent one, the like lateral sulcus. This one is lateral sulcus, which again divides two distinct lobes. And then other regions are like precentral, postcentral gyrus. This is precentral and postcentral gyrus, like that we have. In second peak, here is the top view or dorsal view of the brain with two clear brain hemispheres. So this is left hemisphere, this is right hemisphere. And also you can see few arteries and veins surrounding the brain. The two brain hemispheres are interconnected by a set of nerve fibers known as corpus callosum. So this corpus callosum is visible in sagittal view only. So here is a sagittal view. If you magnify this region, you can see this is corpus callosum, which is consists of nerve fibers connecting both the cerebral hemispheres or brain hemispheres. And other regions also we can see like thalamus is here, the hypothalamus, along with location of two major glands. You can see pineal gland and pituitary gland in the brain. This is another clear view of mid-sagittal section of the brain, where we can see this frontal lobe, central sulcus, thalamus. This one is thalamus. Cerebellum, here this is cerebellum, pons, medulla, and then spinal cord. This is another view of brain from inferior or ventral, or you can say from bottom side. Here we can see prominent pons, this one, medulla, midbrain area, frontal lobe, temporal lobe, and other nerves which are part of peripheral nervous system. We will study these nerves in peripheral nervous system. All these are arising from this brain. Brain can be divided into three regions based on their development from the neural tube. These are forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain is the largest region of brain, comprising main regions like cerebrum, thalamus, epithalamus, hypothalamus. It is involved in the processing and integrating sensory information as well as in coordinating the behavior or responses. Let us talk about cerebrum first. Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. The total is cerebrum here, the colored portion, which is generally visible from the top view of the brain, including all the four functional lobes. Most of the cognitive functions like memory, language processing, responding to sensory signals, etc. are performed by cerebrum only. The topmost layer of the cerebrum, which contains these folds in the form of gyrus and sulcus, is known as cerebrum cortex, cerebral cortex, or just you can say cortex. It stores experiences, or we can say that it helps in learning. The functions of different lobes we have already discussed. Midbrain or mesencephalon is the smallest region of the human brain. Though it is highly developed in birds and fishes or reptiles, for coordinating and initiating responses, it is reduced in size and function in mammals, including humans, where it primarily serves just as a relay center for signals. Sometimes it is grouped with pons and medulla to form the brainstem. So brainstem is just the midbrain, pons and medulla. Hindbrain is made up of pons, medulla, and cerebellum. Pons, you can see here, it is located just below the hypothalamus and serves as the pathway between the medulla, cerebellum, and forebrain. It controls alertness and initiates sleep and dreaming cycle, whereas medulla is continuous part of bones, which is located at the top of the spinal cord. So this spinal cord is located at the top of the spinal cord, and it is involved in regulation of many vital functions like breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, etc. Medulla contains pathway between the spinal cord and the brain, and therefore has many crossovers from left to right and vice versa. Here I want to emphasize the difference between pons and brainstem. Pons is located above the medulla and is responsible for vital functions like breathing, heart rate, etc. On the other hand, midbrain, pons and medulla together form the brainstem, and this is responsible for activities like swallowing, coughing, sneezing, etc. Damage in the pons area will kill someone instantly because this is related to some of the vital activities. Cerebellum is the part of hindbrain which is located at the back of the human brain. It is symmetrical and is formed of two highly convoluted lobes, which contains almost half of the neurons in the brain. The most important function is the coordination of all movements and maintaining of posture, balance, and muscle control. So suppose you are learning how to drive a bike or how to play a guitar, then all these coordinated movements are regulated by your cerebellum. Let us see the other main division of brain, that is peripheral nervous system or PNS. As the name suggests, this comprises of all neurons which originates from the brain and spinal cord to connect all organ systems. The neurons can be afferent neurons or efferent neurons. Afferent neurons actually receives the signal from environment and sends to CNS, that is brain or spinal cord. Whereas efferent neurons carry signal from the CNS to stimulate responses. Means they send the signals to other body organs. PNS is further divided into two subsystems, somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system regulates the voluntary movement like body balance and movement or posture, whereas autonomic nervous system is involved in controlling our involuntary movement like digestion, fight, or flight. It is again divided into two parts, parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system is generally involved in control of those involuntary movements which are associated with rest and breathe functions, whereas sympathetic nervous system is involved in control of those involuntary movements which are associated with fight and flight function. For example, parasympathetic slows down the heart rate and stimulates the flow of saliva. But sympathetic nervous system accelerates heartbeat and inhibits flow of saliva. That's why I'm saying the sympathetic nervous system is involved in fight and flight, whereas parasympathetic is involved in rest and breathe functions. Now we will talk about the components of PNS or peripheral nervous system. These are cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves arises from the brain case and spinal nerves originate from the spinal cord. Cranial nerves are 12 in pairs and these are labeled as CN1, CN2, CN3, and like so on with Roman numerals. And some of these nerves are afferent and some are efferent. Whereas spinal nerves are named based on the region of the spine from where they originate. So this image shows the cranial nerves in yellow shade. You can see this is like inferior or bottom view of the brain, and you can see this cranial nerves in yellow here labeled as CN1, CN2, CN3 like this up to CN12 they have named. And all these cranial nerves perform different functions like sensory, like receiving signals from sense organs, or somatic motor like controlling of different skeletal muscles, or they can perform parasympathetic functions like regulation of glands, smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, or they can also be involved in proprioception, means they give you the positional information of your different body parts. This is the table summary of cranial nerves. So we can take a couple of examples. For example, this CN1, cranial nerve 1, is olfactory nerve, and it is sensory in nature, or you can say this is afferent neuron, which receives the signal through smell, or means nose. Whereas the last one, cranial nerve 12, is known as hypoglossal nerve, and it is motor, or you can say the efferent type of neuron, and it helps in the swallowing and speech. Spinal nerves are 31 pairs, and these are named as cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccyx, depending upon the regions of spinal cord from where they are rising. So like 8 pairs of these are the cervical, these are thoracic nerves, these are lumbar, sacral, and then the last one is coccyx spinal nerves. So regarding functions, you can imagine that their respective areas which are covered and hence controlled by these nerves for sensing the environment or producing the actions. For example, this thoracic spinal nerves. So this thoracic means this area. So most of the nerves are controlling or sensing the upper chest area. So in summary, what we have covered in today's lecture, we have seen the overview of nervous system, which is mainly divided into 2 parts, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. CNS, or central nervous system, contains brain and spinal cord as the major organs. In brain, we saw cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem, pons, and 4 lobes as the major components. Whereas spinal cord was located like information superhighway to transmit the information from peripheral nervous system to central nervous system, or vice versa. Whereas in peripheral nervous system, we saw autonomic and somatic subsystems. Somatic was made up of sensory and motor nerves, or you can say afferent and efferent neurons, whereas autonomic was made up of 2 subsystems, sympathetic, or you can say flight or flight system, and parasympathetic nervous system, or you can say the relaxation neurosystem. That's all for the today's lecture. In next lecture, I will try to cover the neurons and action potential part. Thank you very much.